Love finances, the other F word, and want to support the show? Become a patron by going to patreon.com/FTOFW. You'll get special features, a shout out on the air, and early releases. Or if you prefer, pick up some merchandise at financestheotherfword.com.
As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, and as wonderful an attorney as I am, please do note that anything said in our show are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Finances, the Other F Word. And guess what? Zoe is back.
Hello. I know you missed me.
Back from jolly old England. How was your trip?
It was good. Yeah. I mean, it was difficult in parts with the testing, and some of my family caught COVID, but it was nice to get back to the homeland.
Every time you say homeland, I think of like Africa, and I'm like, no, she's literally talking about Britain.
Yes, that is my homeland. Don't forget that England is my city, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And so today, for those of you who are viewing us on YouTube, Zoe has I love twatting written behind her. And what does that mean exactly?
Well, I think if the present of tweeting, if the present is to tweet, then to twat or to twat is the past participle of tweeting. So, I don't know. I made it up.
So participle, first of all, I don't know if I've ever heard that word.
It's an English grammatical term. The past participle of, it's like to run is the present participle. I ran is the past participle. So there you go. It's all England. It's all English. It's all grammar. Stuff that you don't need to concern your pretty little head over, you know? Like spelling and shit.
Yes. Well, I'm glad at least somebody has recognized that I have a pretty little head. So versus giving pretty little head, look what I did there. I switched it around. I know.
Cover your ears. Cover your ears.
Don't cover your ears, because today we are going to talk about the first in our series of social media. Now, what I hope to uncover in this series, and I don't know if we'll get there, is the past administration of the United States had kind of a vendetta against social media while at the same time loving social media. And one of his biggest favorite platforms and one of the biggest targets of his scorn was Twitter. And so I want to answer the question of, are the social media platforms, in fact, honestly too big? And we've talked a lot about monopolies on this show before, and I hope to look at the social media channels as companies and see how far their reach is, and do kind of like what we did with Disney the Monopoly and Facebook the Monopoly and the U.S. Power Grid Monopoly, where we look at the companies as themselves as they stand. So we're going to go through some information on Twitter, and then Zoe is going to give us some information on the on that. My dog is accosting her right now.
There's a fly that is bothering her, so that's why she's going a little bit crazy.
So that's a YouTube bonus for you guys. You can see my adorable dog attacking flies. So let's
she got it.
Nope, she didn't.
Oh, she didn't? Oh.
No, it just flew by.
Okay.
She's going to choke herself, though. Okay, so let's get in here right now. And for those of you who are watching us live, if you drop questions in the chat, I'll get to them here in a minute, but we got to get through some information. So let's talk about some Twitter stats real quick, shall we? So most of the users for Twitter are in the United States, and there's about around 77 million users of Twitter in the United States. Now the fly is buzzing around my head. I'm going to kill this fucking fly.
And I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
The Twitters. followers, or
Yes.
users.
Yes, we have a very humble following on Twitter.
Very humble.
Yes.
About 70, I think.
Yes, I think it's at 80 now, so
Oh,
don't shortchange us.
woo-hoo! Oh.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, so most of the users of Twitter are in the United States to the tune of around 77 million. And the U.S. population is currently around 329 million, and obviously I rounded down, meaning that about 23% of all Americans use Twitter.
Wow, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
It's crazy talk.
Crazy, and this
Read a book.
This will come back here in a moment. And as we go through this series and we talk about all the different social media platforms, we will be talking about the reach of these companies as, again, just as their size. So I want you to remember that number. So 23%, again, rounded down, of Americans use Twitter. And just to give you guys a comparison so you understand what that is, last year, 29% of the United States watched the Super Bowl. So we have a very tight margin there as far as between the people who actually use Twitter in the United States and the people who watched our NFL games. The second country who uses Twitter the most is Japan at about 58 million. And they have a population of 125 million. So they have about 46% of the people in Japan use Twitter. And in India, 24 million people use Twitter with a population of over 1 billion, so about 2.4% of the population. Currently, there's approximately 400 million users on Twitter on any monthly basis. 206 million of them are daily Twitter users, and 187 million of those 206 million are monetized. So for those of you who haven't seen The Social Dilemma on Netflix, you saw it too, right, Zoe?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking amazing. And so as soon as I read that statistic, I was like, oh, Jesus, that's completely The Social Dilemma. 92% of all the tweets come from the top 10% of the users. So we kind of see a skewed 80-20 rule there coming in. Average age demographic for Twitter is 25 to 34. And approximately 158 minutes per month is spent on the app, or approximately 6.5 days.
A month?
A month.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That's just frightening.
Total. Like if you just went, nonstop. So let's talk a little bit about Twitter, and then we will be talking about Twitter and the Trump connection. I tried not to do it, but unfortunately, right now, in the United States, especially given the time of the year it is, which we will talk about, you cannot mention one T without the other T. So let's just go over some quick information here. Who owns Twitter? The largest individual holders of Twitter shares currently right now is Jack Dorsey, who is one of the creators and founders of Twitter. The bulk of the shares are all held by investment companies. So these are hedge funds, these are different financial plans, mutual fund companies, those types of things, venture capital companies, all of that stuff. So for those of you who don't know Jack Dorsey, first of all, he looks like he should be in a fucking cabin in the woods like the Unabomber. He has varying degrees of beard lengths, and he does not look like he's, worth billions of dollars, yet of course he is. People know him because he is said to eat only once a day, and he takes...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and apparently it's a thing. I don't know, my uncle does the same thing, but they eat a massive meal. And then I guess they fast. It's like intermittent fasting, but to the extreme. He takes regular ice baths. So he is said to go for between the sauna and the ice bath and back and forth. So I don't know. Maybe it gives him some kind of sexual prowess. Who knows? He co-founded the company in March 21st of 2006, and then he was fired as its CEO in 2008. But then he was brought back in 2015 after creating the company Square, which we have talked about Square on, I think it was the Disruptors episode. We've talked about Square before on this show, so go back and you can hear that. He started programming computers at 15 and wrote dispatch software for taxi companies, and some of them still use that, which is A, kind of scary that they're using software that's old, and B, that the man was smart enough to do that shit at 15. He was a punk rocker. He never graduated high school. In the year 2000, he built a prototype that allowed him to update his friends and family on his life and the events of his life using email and BlackBerry, and nobody seemed to care about it, and so he shelved it. So we're going to come back to that here in a minute. He started working at a podcast company named Odeo, and he met his future Twitter co-founders there. And Odeo went out of business, as tech startups do. And him and his co-founders, he pulled off the BlackBerry idea, and they created Twitter. So Dorsey's first tweet was on March 21st of 2006, and it simply said, just setting up my TWTTR, so short for Twitter.
Oh yeah, removing that I.
Exactly.
Made all the fucking difference right there.
Absolutely. There's, we got things to do.
That I's too much for me.
Absolutely. So he saved us all a little bit of time there, but we're going to go back to this because we've actually talked about his tweet before in one of our prior episodes, which I'm going to allude to in here in a minute. He had a nose ring, which he decided that he was going to stop having at 30, but now the nose ring is back for those of you who care. They bought.
I do.
There you go. Oh, that's right. Because your co-host Zoe also has a nose ring, but yours is very, very classic. It's
delicate.
Yeah, it's understated.
Understated.
It is. It's understated.
Just like me.
Yes, I mean, if she's sober, that would be true. If she's not sober, then not so much. They bought the domain name for Twitter for $7,000. And they went public with an IPO in November of 2013, and the IPO took off. We've touched on initial public offerings before. We're not going to get back into that. And you will find that Twitter is a publicly traded company, and I am not going into the financials of Twitter because it can be perceived by compliance as me giving advice. So we're going to stay clear of all of that stuff. So, just letting you guys know, folks, that that's not going to happen. He gave 10% of his stock to Square to help his employees out with different stock options. I'm assuming in the article they were alluding to his Twitter stock. Not really sure. He is the largest individual shareholder of Twitter at about 2.25% of Twitter he owns by himself. Him and Elon Musk are in bed together. They just, not literally, or maybe they are, I don't know.
Thought.
Yeah, but they love each other. They have a love affair. That's his favorite. Musk is his favorite tweeter. And, of course, Elon Musk has came to Dorsey's defense multiple times. Dorsey currently has 6.1 million followers. He has had to testify in front of Congress multiple times. Again, this goes back to the previous administration. And he had to give testimony along with the COO of Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg. This was in 2018. Then in October of 2020, he had to do it again, and he was accused by the prior administration of anti-conservative bias, which we're going to come back to here in a second. Zuckerberg was also accused of that. However, because the prior administration loved Twitter so much, Twitter took the brunt of most of the accusations of anti-conservative bias. Now, when I read that, I go, okay, shut the fuck up. You're just upset over some bullshit and perceived grievances. But there's something very interesting. Twitter blocked the URLs associated with a New York Post story about Hunter Biden, claiming that it violated their hacked materials policy, and because their sourcing algorithm was tripped, saying that it was potentially a false statement, and false news, fake news. And what happened is that every time that somebody tried to post this story about Hunter Biden, Twitter blocked it. And Dorsey later said, apologized for it and said, yeah, we shouldn't have done that. So I take that how you want to, but I thought that was really interesting because I'm sure there's a ton of stories that the algorithm blocks, but of all the ones when you're being accused of being having an anti-conservative bias, and then your actual fucking platform blocks a story about your political opponent's son. So I just thought that was very interesting. He gets dragged back in front of Congress again in November of 2020, and they want to know how he handled his moderation, how they handled the content around the 2020 presidential election. And Zuckerberg finds himself back in front of Congress over the same questioning, and we're going to get into that a little bit. This is why you'll see that in this episode, even though this is not what I started out trying to do, unfortunately, that all kinds of works together, and it's very, very entangled. And in April 2020, Dorsey created a fund to help globally from the impact of COVID. The fund was funded with $2.6 billion and to date has spent about $427 million. It's paid out in grants. And they are saying that once COVID is done, assuming it's ever done, they are going to then switch the focus of the fund is going to switch to girls' health and education. The reason why this is important is because, first of all, he's, doing non-profitable stuff, which is fucking great and awesome. But more importantly is because one of those owners that we talked about before had tried to get Dorsey ousted as CEO. Before he actually stepped down. He actually stepped down November of last year from Twitter as a CEO. But while he was still active CEO, Paul Singer of Elliott's Management was trying to get Dorsey ousted as CEO because he was saying that Dorsey was too involved in other things, including in part his nonprofit. They swung out a little deal and everything got worked out temporarily until he stepped down November of 2021. In July 2020, there was a hack now and this is public record. If you guys look at any of Jack Dorsey's tweets, he's a crypto. He's a big supporter of crypto. And so in July 2020, there was a hack of verified accounts, including Kim Kardashian and Bill Gates, in regards to Bitcoin, where they said, hey, for the next 30 minutes only, if you send me $1,000, I'm going to double it and send you back money, et cetera, et cetera. Apparently, some people believed this bullshit and they did it. And from the time that the first tweet hit, which I believe was on Bill Gates' account, till the time that Twitter had to step in and be drastic, they closed down, they froze all of the verified accounts. Which was a whole big hubbub because the people who didn't have verified accounts were finally like, yeah, fuck you guys. And Twitter just came in and shut the whole thing down because they couldn't figure out where it was coming from. They couldn't get the hijacking under control and they just needed to do damage control. So they stepped in, again, and all the links are in the article, within like 5 minutes. And they just put the kibosh on everything. And his first ever tweet sold as an NFT, which you've talked about on our NFT episode series. It's a 2-part series for $2.9 million, and it was purchased from the CEO of Bridge Oracle. And Dorsey gave all $2.9 million to the proceeds to African Relief. So that was pretty nice. And on November 29th of 2021, Dorsey stepped down as CEO of Twitter. Now, the reason why Twitter is important as a social media tool is because, I had read an article where basically Twitter, when you were looking at the Twitter feed, it was giving you the nitty-gritty, unfiltered news. And then if you went over to Facebook, there was no mention of it as a trending topic at all. And you were looking at, one of your friend's kids or some bullshit like that. And so they were talking about how Twitter and Facebook were completely two separate types of social media platforms, which came up in the congressional hearings, et cetera, et cetera. And they are known for their trending news, hard-hitting, fast news, so much so that Reuters actually created software that would go through all of the breaking news content that was coming out on Twitter, and it would give it a credibility score by using a couple different keywords, by using AI, which we covered on episode number 335, and kind of sifting through it to see if these tweets were legitimate. And then that is how they actually got pointed to a whole bunch of breaking news. So you have this platform where social media is creating the news around it. And then we see Google and Twitter go into a part sell, but not a part sell. Basically, Google bought Twitter's, development tools, and that's kind of where it went. Everybody thought that Google was going to maybe buy completely Twitter out, but of course that didn't happen. So let's talk about Twitter and Trump. So for those of you who have been living under a rock, Trump was banned in Twitter of January of 2021, and it's a whole big deal because he had been threatened multiple times, or he had been that Twitter had told him multiple times, hey, stop or we're going to boot you off the system. And of course, Donald Trump was a big user of Twitter, and
it's the only reason my husband ever went on Twitter was so that he could abuse Trump via Twitter.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I talk about a little bit later here, is that social media gives you the ability to talk shit to the literal president of the United States. It's just fucking insane. So Twitter. So what I did, and this is in the resources, and I really there's two resources I really think that you guys should look, and all of them are going to be in the show notes. Number one is that there was a study out of Ohio, which I tried to fit it in here, but I couldn't fit it in because it didn't have anything to do with specifically what we were talking about. But it did a deep dive study of how, going back from the very beginning of Trump's Twitter account, how he started crafting a narrative that was very specific and that was full of a lot of grievances on his way to how it got him to get the Republican nomination and then get him into the White House, and some say lead the insurrection of January 6th in 2020. So this was all over the news. We just passed the anniversary for that, so a lot of this is really poignant. But Twitter has had an anti-harassment filter, and it's been in place since 2015. Now, filters are going to become very important as we start talking more about the social media platforms and where their reach is and where their reach isn't. And so one of the things that is part of the anti-harassment filters is that it blocks violent and obscene tweets. So it's designed to allow, and one of the resources are in there, is a study that was done where somebody was trying to trigger the algorithm and made a whole bunch of fake Twitter accounts and started going after certain people to try to figure out how the algorithm worked. You guys can read about that. And then basically what they found is that while it is designed to, if somebody comes out, if words like rape or kill come out, it's going to go into an excess filter and or block the content. But it still allows critical and disagreeable tweets to pass. So somebody could put, I fucking hate you, and that would go through the filter. Now, when a tweet is blocked, it doesn't tell you it's blocked. It still stays on your profile, but it just doesn't show it to anybody. And so you really don't have any idea of knowing if the stuff that you've said has actually triggered this filter. Now, January 8th of 2021, Twitter officially bans former President Trump from the platform, stating, quote, "We have permanently suspended the account due to the risk of further incitement of violence." So the second link in the show notes that I really want you guys to look at is basically the Twitter press release, because I had heard that Trump was banned from Twitter, and I don't care how you feel about it. Some people think X, some people think Y. But I never actually read the official statement on what it was specifically, the reasoning for them banning Trump. So I did some digging. So I'm going to tell you here in a nutshell, but the link is in the show notes so you can find it out for yourself. So Twitter was very specific about two accounts that came out of the @RealDonaldTrump Trump account. That was the one that they suspended. And the two tweets are as follows. Now, some of these words are capitalized, and the words that are capitalized are going to be, I'm going to emphasize so you can understand, get the feeling for the tweet. So his first tweet was, quote, "The 75,000 great American patriots who voted for me, America first, and make America great again, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form," with 3 exclamation points. The second tweet that came out of the account that Twitter cited in their banning of President Trump was, quote, "To all of those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th, end quote. And so when Twitter did their official release, they stated these two tweets in particular, and they said that it violated their glorification of violence policy, and they were worried that this would encourage and incite further violent acts. And so here are the factors that Twitter weighed in deciding to ban Trump from their platform. They said that for the not attending the inauguration tweet, I don't know why I keep saying treat, not attending the inauguration tweet, they stated, quote, the inauguration tweet is being received by a number of his supporters as further confirmation that the election was not legitimate and is seen as him disavowing his previous claims made via 2 tweets, which are the 2 we're referencing now, by his deputy chief of staff, Dan Scavino, and there would be an orderly transition of power. So basically, Scavino saying there's going to be orderly transition of power, Twitter saying yes, but you're saying you're not going to the inauguration, which gives us the indication, or the indication to your followers, that you don't really intend to turn over the orderly transition of power, which is a big deal here in the United States. It's kind of one of the backbones of our democracy, and I know we have a lot of global listeners. The Twitter also alluded to the fact that by letting his followers know that he would not be attending the inauguration, that it would be a, quote, safe target because he would not be in attendance. Now, whether that's meaning he's not going to be in attendance and can't be blamed, or he wouldn't be in attendance so he couldn't get hurt, I don't know. Twitter did not specify in their release. They go on to state his use of American patriots why the fuck can I talk? Interpreted. Jesus, my Lord. Okay. His use of American patriot is interpreted as support of those who commit acts against the U.S. Capitol. There was a big stink about this, and he later ended up walking back or made one of his comments, quotes that Trump did, a little bit more milder, but American patriots was the first thing. And lastly, one of the things that they reference is that Trump's use of, quote, giant voice long into the future, and that they will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form, with 3 exclamation points, furthered their belief that Trump was not going to help facilitate the transition of orderly transfer of power. And so based on those things that were cited in their press release, and again, the link is in the show notes, Twitter kicked his ass off the platform, and it was a whole big hubbub, and he was immensely butthurt. I gotta be honest with you, I was happy as fuck. Zoe?
Oh, well, I was indifferent, other than poor Todd could no longer enjoy, abusing Trump on Twitter, and now the poor lad has to have his fun on Nextdoor app, abusing our neighbors instead.
And well, we'll have to talk about that later. That's a different show. Why would he do that?
Well, if you've never been on the Nextdoor app,
I have.
Oh God. Well, I don't know about yours, but ours is awful. It's full of awful people complaining about suspicious characters in hoodies, and just they deserve everything they get, just like the president did. So, a former president did. So, but yes, I completely agree. He should have been removed.
So I looked a little farther into what exactly is their stance on political stuff, right? Because Twitter is a social media platform, and, what is their take on it? We're going to be doing this on the other platforms we cover. So this is Twitter's policy on political ads. Twitter globally prohibits the promotion of political content, citing political reach should be earned, not bought. Now, for those of you who don't live in the United States, you have no idea how fucking stupid around election time in this country. Basically, what ends up happening is that you have, like, every third ad is about politics, about, local politics or the federal level. It's a fucking miserable time to try to listen to the radio or try to listen to any other content, and they put a whole bunch of political ads on it. It's fucking annoying as shit. And here in America, we've touched on this in another show, but I'm going to touch on it real quick. We have PACs, which are political action committees, and then we have super PACs, which are super political action committees, and they can go in and they can raise money from individuals and corporations and unions and other groups without any legal limitation on donation size, and they can run commercials for or against a candidate, but they cannot donate directly to the person's campaign. And so it is just fucking miserable around election time here, and I'm already dreading 2024 because the political ads are coming. So Twitter says, fuck all that. We're not going to run those. So political content for Twitter is going to be anything consistent of anything with candidates, political parties, elected or appointed officials, elections, referendums, ballot measures, legislation, regulation, directives, and judicial outcomes. Any political solicitations trying to get you on one side or the other is prohibited. And news publishers are partially exempt to this in the fact that if they have advertisement that happens to highlight an article that they've written about politics either way is fine, as long as they don't try to sway in that advertisement in any way, shape, or form for either of the sides. So Twitter has had a pretty long list of, this is what we won't deal with politically way before everything. Now, did that cart before the horse, or did that come from the Trump administration? I don't really know, but I'm just telling you what it is now. They also ban ads from super PACs and from PACs and from 501c4s. So if you want to know what a 501c4 is, you can go back and listen to our series on churches being non-exempt, and we talk a little bit about that and the 501c3s and those types of things. Now, Trump's Twitter stats, just to give you guys an understanding of where he was when he got booted from the platform, he had done 59,553 tweets and retweets. He had 88,936,841 followers on Twitter, which means that even if everybody in the United States that used Twitter followed him, he still had global following. And he was one of the most followed political leaders domestically and abroad. You can figure out why you think that is, whatever side of the aisle you're on. He had 1.6 million likes. He opened up his Twitter account on March 18th of 2009, and he sent his first tweet on May 4th of 2009. So when we talk about my very first statistic, and then I'm going to turn it over to Zoe for some fun stuff. When we talk about my very first statistic, 23% of the United States uses Twitter. And the thing is that when we talked about Disney, the monopoly, we talked about how they currently run 40% of the media sector. They got an antitrust lawsuit put against them, which we talked about, that failed, along with many other antitrust lawsuits that we've also talked about. So 23% of the United States follows Twitter. We had that be a major platform for a then sitting president, and a lot of people can say, and I'd be interested in what you think on this, Zoe. A lot of people, hey, Twitter is America, we love capitalism, right? And so Dorsey and his companions, they built Twitter up, and it's this massive thing, and they became, billionaires as a result of it. And if Trump chose to use Twitter as his primary source of communication, often bypassing the White House, which was against protocol, then Twitter as a company holds no responsibility to Trump, as it really holds no responsibility to Zoe or I or any of you if we were to use the platform. But the thing that's crazy about this is that, like how we mentioned before, that, when you can talk shit directly to the president, but think about a publicly traded company was able to, in essence, silence a president. Now, I get that he could have called a news conference at any time. He could have, called up Fox News and vented for another hour on some, grievance that he has. I'm sorry, we're not really a fan of Trump on this show. So he wasn't silenced in the fact of, he didn't have a bazillion other outlets, but his primary place that people went to get information directly from the horse's mouth, I almost said something bad, they banned him from. And so when you think about, as we're moving through this series, when you're thinking about social media, and we're talking about the reaches of all these different types of platforms, Twitter is a good example to kick off with, because regardless of whether it was, Trump's decision or whatever, the point is that a publicly traded company owned by a couple of guys ultimately muted the president of the United States. And I mean, that is ludicrous to me. And I'm not on Trump's side on this. But when you really think about it, if we're going to have a true conversation about the reach of a potential, is social media too big? Is social media too influential? Then you have to keep it in that context where they, in effect, silenced the president. And I wasn't butthurt about that at all. But that just still blows my mind. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Zoe.
I think my thoughts are that they weren't silencing information or facts. They were silencing disinformation. And they do have a responsibility to do that. They were silencing potential hate speech and very potentially deadly misinformation regarding particularly the pandemic and things like that. They do have a responsibility to fact check some of the things that are said and to silence some of, some of their biggest, well, to anyone really. And he was one of the biggest proponents of bullshit. And so I don't know. Free speech is one thing, but when you're in the middle of a pandemic and he's saying that you should shoot up bleach, do they have a responsibility to let him go? If you really, really wanted to listen to what Trump had to say, there are many. He's all over the place. You could still find him on your, radio, Fox News, whatever. But I don't feel bad or think that they did anything wrong in turning him fucking off, personally.
Well, and my counter to that is I agree. I agree with the egregious amount of misinformation and not really. I mean, I didn't pay attention to his tweets, so I'm sure there was hate speech in there. I can't quote you anything directly because I honestly didn't pay attention to the man. Like I said, Twitter is not my huge is not my social media platform of choice. But if we look at that in the context of one of the things that I pointed out in Disney Monopoly is that if you look at this from a country security standpoint, where somebody comes in and they work with a company that has 40% of the media sector, then that could be a way that if you're talking like if we're looking at North Korea and we're, making fun of them because they have their leader on 24/7 on the state-ran news channels, then who's to say that, like, let's say that there was not a Gandhi or an MLK that was on the platform, that whoever the powers that be deemed that they were not saying the right things, that they couldn't end up muting them. Zoe's shaking her head. You got to see this on YouTube, you guys, because anything I say, she gets this real time. We have some things coming, so she can tell me even faster what she feels. But she's shaking her head. What do you not like about my statement?
Because there's a difference between opinions and facts, and he was spouting out stuff that was it's not about shutting down his opinions that they didn't like. They were shutting down some of his misinformation, disinformation, his facts that were wrong, and that's what my problem was. And he was putting people in danger with some of his bullshit. So it's not about, what if we get a real leftist or rightist a company controlling the media, such as Twitter or whatever. It's that we were in the middle of a pandemic and an election that had gone not the way he wanted, and he was spouting out facts that were not right. And you can't argue with science, and you can't argue with facts. So it's not really open for debate, I don't think.
But couldn't it be like, so there's scientific evidence that says that there is no color blue. So if I go on Twitter right now and I say there is no color blue, and all you people who see the color blue are all assholes that, blah, blah, blah. I mean,
yeah, but that's not going to hurt anyone. You saying that there's no...
But it's the same thing, though.
But you're not putting millions of lives at risk by saying there's not a color blue, are you? So I think you have to look at the cause and effect.
So does that mean that every anti-vaxxer that goes on Twitter and saying that, okay, Jenny McCarthy, let's talk about her. Her son was, I guess, supposed to be autistic, but then later was found he actually just had ADD. I don't know. And she ran this big campaign against vaccinations, and that made her son autistic. And then it comes out, she's like, oh, whoops, sorry. That wasn't the case. So if somebody like Jenny McCarthy goes on Twitter and says, the vaccines gave my son autism, she's not a fucking doctor. But do you think Twitter would come in and ban her?
No, but maybe there should be fact check alerts like there are on Facebook now.
Yeah, well, I mean, and this was a year, this was literally almost a year to the day ago at the time of this recording. So who knows what they have now. Like I said, we're not super...
Yeah, neither of us. I'm not on Twitter.
We're not super big on Twitter.
Lily Lou is, and even she doesn't have a huge following. And I'm not sure it's her favourite social media platform either, but I'm not on it. I don't get it. I'm not interested in it.
For me, it just seems like if you wanted to spend your entire time reading, that maybe Reddit would be a better option, which, Twitter is just constantly just, I don't know. I mean, I don't get it either, but that's the things I think about where it's like, where's the line? Again, I don't in any way, shape, or form think that Dorsey was wrong to ban Trump. I am not on Trump's side during this, but it is a good point of argument where, again, you have a Jenny McCarthy who clearly had less followings than Trump, waged this huge war. A lot of people, specifically women, fell in line with her and did not get their children vaccinated because of this autistic connection. For her to come out later and go, oh, whoops, sorry. So,
but there's also a big difference between Jenny McCarthy and the former president of the United States of America, I think, in terms of reach and, but still.
Yeah, but
who gives a shit about what Jenny McCarthy has to say? Obviously, some people do, and that's why I think there should be some kind of alert. She's not a doctor. Fact check it, like there is on Facebook now. But it's just varying degrees of fucking stupidity.
No, I agree, and that is so this is just the setup for our social media series so that you guys can understand, because I'm really trying to get at the heart of, was Congress correct in pulling the social media platforms in front of them to testify because of any bias? Flip that. If Democrats were in control at that time and, you had a Rush Limbaugh that was running Twitter, would there be ground to stand on to say that they had an anti-liberal bias or something like that? So I'm trying to really get at what filters, what policies, how are the social media companies running? And if the shoe is on the other foot, is there a legitimate reason to have the conversation that social media is too big, or is this literally just a political grievance that they're airing? And the thing is I don't know the answer to that question, which is the reason why I'm exploring it to the best of my ability, and all the resources are in the show notes. I really recommend that you guys check it out. But now let's talk about, since this is Zoe's favorite platform, all of the huge followers on Twitter. They're our biggest guys.
Yeah, so I did a huge deep dive, hours and
you look
hours
so
of
tired.
Research into the top people who have the most followers on Twitter, and for this also the notes will be in the research will be in the show notes, and this is according to an article from November 2021, so it's a couple of months old, but not much has changed. And this is the top 20 Twitter followers. Is that what I mean? No.
Twitter accounts.
Twitter accounts, there you go. See, I don't even know what the lingo is. I don't know. I don't care. You twit, you twat, you twit. I don't know. I just do what you want. But so number 20 on the list is CNN, who has 55 million followers. Okay.
CNN.
CNN.
Oh, CNN. For some reason, I'm thinking of like the I don't know. I'm thinking of a company that has got it. Okay, CNN, news following, got it.
News followers. They have 55 million followers.
Which would fall in line with the demographic of 25 to 34 on Twitter.
Number 19. It's Britney, bitch!
Oh my God, really?
Britney Spears is number 19. She has 55, or as of November 2021, she had 55.6 million followers.
Incidentally, have you seen her newest Instagram reels? She looks like a hot fucking mess.
Oh, God. I know that she's been doing a lot naked with little emojis
naked,
on her bits.
And her hair looks crazy, and her face looks crazy. And it's like, you know what? I mean, to be fair, Kim Kardashian poses naked all the time, but she looks like she has her shit together. Britney looks like a fucking hot trailer mess.
She's just letting loose.
Right now. I hope so.
Yeah.
Because I really hope that's what it is.
Yeah, and it hasn't all gone horribly
I
wrong.
know.
And everyone
We're
will be
not
going,
going to think about
fuck.
that.
Yeah.
Then they're like, maybe not free Britney as much.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll
Maybe
see.
lock her back up a little bit and just let her out on weekends.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And she has quite a few celebrity followers too, including Cher, Drake, and Janet Jackson. So everybody loves a bit of Britters. We all hope that she's going to keep it together. Number 18 is Bill Gates, who you already mentioned. He has 56 million followers. Number 17 is Twitter. Twitter has a lot of followers. He has I think it probably is a he. Has 60.3 million followers. Number 16 on the list is CNN Breaking News. Even more people are following Breaking News. 61.5 million people follow that. Then at number 15, it's Justin Timberlake. He has 63.3 million followers. I love a bit of Justin, especially Dick in a Box. I love him for that.
Yeah.
Now, number 14 is Jack Dorsey's bed butt boy companion, Elon Musk. He has 63.5 million followers. Not a big surprise there. Number 13, Selena Gomez. She has 65.2 million followers. And she has some celebrity followers, including Katy Perry and Justin Timberlake. Don't quite see the big deal about Selena Gomez, but then I think I'm probably a bit too old. Number 12, Kim Kardashian. She has 70.4 million followers. Number 11, funnily enough, having mentioned that India was one of the top countries.
The third top country
countries
for Twitter.
Well, number 11 in terms of followers is Narendra Modi, who is India's Prime Minister. He's been in power since 2014. He has 72.4 million followers. Then at number 10, YouTube has 73.6 million followers. Number 9, Ellen DeGeneres has 77.7 million followers. And apparently is famous. It was so not famous to me that I had to look it up. But apparently she did a famous Oscars tweet. Did you know about this in March?
I did, yeah. She took a selfie with a whole bunch of people.
A bunch of stars, including Bradley Cooper and all that. That was the most retweeted tweet of all time for a while. And yeah, so she's number 9 of the top most followed Twitter accounts. Number 8 is Lady Gaga. She has 83.8 million followers, and she's followed by the likes of Miley Cyrus and Oprah Winfrey. Number 7 is Ariana Grande with 84.6 million followers, and people like Harry Styles and Lindsay Lohan follow her. What is Lindsay Lohan even doing? I don't know. Number 6, Taylor Swift has 88.9 million followers, and apparently, according to Brandwatch, who wrote this article, she's the most influential person on Twitter, according to her research.
So let me jump in here, because what number is Taylor Swift?
Number 6.
Number 6. We just finally caught up to Trump's numbers.
Right.
So every single person, because I've been waiting, every single person she said before this has not hit him, but Trump had 88.9 million followers on Twitter. So so number 6. Okay, I just wanted to point that out so you guys understand how much reach this gentleman,
if we can call him a gentleman,
he had on Twitter. We'll just leave it at that.
So, as I said, she's the most influential person on Twitter, and she barely even tweets. I do like her because she loves her cats. So anyway, number 5, this kind of surprised me. Number 5 is Cristiano Ronaldo, who is a footballer who has been mired in controversy recently, but that's another story. Has 95.3 million followers, and he's followed by people like Lil Wayne, Jack Dorsey himself, and Usain Bolt. Number 4, Rihanna. She has 103.3 million followers. Can you imagine?
No.
Number 3, Katy Perry has 108.7 million followers. And her followers include Alicia Keys and Neil Patrick Harris. Lucky lady. Now we're getting to the final 2. Can you guess, or do you know?
Oh, God. Fuck. I mean, you already took Gaga out. You already took Taylor Swift out. No, I don't. I'll think on number 1. Tell me number 2
Number
is.
2 is Justin Bieber. It's the Biebs. He has 114 million followers, including Queen Latifah and Jaden Smith. So,
I don't know. I can't imagine that Haley, his wife, has more followers than him. And I forgot to mention, I want to throw in here as we're stalling to see who the number 1 followed person is on Twitter.
Yeah.
Jack Dorsey, when I checked, has 6.1 million followers. And he fucking created the platform.
that's nothing.
Which is, I know, fucking... okay, so drum roll.
Number 1 is Barack Obama.
Really?
Yeah, he has 130.1 million followers.
I could have sat here for the next 5 hours and never guessed Obama.
Yep. And then there's some famous celebrities who just refuse to join in the Twitter bollocks. And some famous people include George Clooney, who's just absolutely against Twitter. And he says, if you're famous, why would you want to be in any way more available than you already are? Jennifer Lawrence, who says she's a bit afraid of it. Alex Turner from the Arctic Monkeys. I don't know why that came up at the article, but okay, who cares? But anyway, there you go. Brad Pitt, also, best mates with George Clooney. He's not on Twitter. Bill Murray, not a great surprise because he's kind of reclusive, isn't he?
Yeah.
Larry David, which kind of made me laugh. There was a little story that apparently he signed up for Twitter so that to send a single tweet for charity and then never ever posted again. And then Robert De Niro, who says he just doesn't get it, which is so granddad, but I also don't get it, so that's fine. But Barack Obama is top of the pile when it comes to Twitter.
I wouldn't have thought that. I guess he's still influential, even with being a former president. So we'll be covering other platforms as we move through this, and we'll be doing kind of the same style. And I'm going to be trying to work really hard to bring the numbers back to something that's digestible, so that when we're all said and done with this, we can get all the numbers together and actually see how much control that the social media platforms do have. And one last statistic I'll leave you with is that 91% of all businesses advertise on social media. So that's a big fucking number. Again, Americans, we love our capitalists. So we hope that you guys are having a great 2022 so far. Please do not give up on your resolutions because you made them for a reason. So keep going as much as you can. I will be on TikTok live at Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. around 7:30 p.m. Pacific. So if you guys want to jump on there and get a little knowledge dropped on you about financial planning so that you can get your financial shit together this year, I will be there for you. Follow Lily Lou Mittens on Instagram. And of course, make sure that you follow Finance is the Other F Word. And you can also be in on the live recordings of our shows on Twitch at 3 p.m. on Tuesdays. So we have a very humbler following on Twitch, but if you guys ever want to jump on there and ask us a question, then that would be fantastic, and we will be here for it. You can find us at Mel O FTOFW, and with that, is that it?
That's it.
I think we are out this bitch. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please check back for upcoming episodes and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Finances, the Other F Word.